This script was a very interesting one to kind of play about with, just because at the very beginning it says that there shouldn't be any transitions between each scene, and it should just go run from one to the other without really being able to tell which one's which. Um, for the most part, well, for some scenes this was achievable, as there were a few that I strung together to make it seem like they were just continuous, such as the really short ones like 51 and 52. I was able to string together quite easily. Um, but for others, it was really hard, as with the props I had and the lighting and swapping sides of the stage, well, that helped quite a bit, as sometimes you could just walk through a door and we're in another scene. It also hindered a little bit as well, as if they had to swap sides during a transition, then they either had to walk through the door or around it, and I had to try and think about that in when I was directing it, as to which one would be least disruptive but also look the best. Ideal scenario, I'd have backstage so they could walk around during scenes and you won't be able to tell. But obviously we don't have the capabilities of doing that. With the script as a whole, I think it works quite well. There aren't many stage directions as such, so there's a few about what the actors should do, but very little overall. I think the main ones I got was just before the appendix at the end, saying kind of what lighting and stuff to use. And then there are a few that says Christopher gets up out of the sleeping bag, or Ed spreads his fingers and tries to get Christopher to touch him. So there's some like that that are just kind of roughly what they want the actor to do. But because they're so simple, of just the kind of movements that happen rather than the emotions behind them and kind of where they are on stage, what's going on, it left it very much up to interpretation, because I could play about with it however I wanted, really, and kind of figure out for myself how I wanted them to feel and everything like that, which was both helpful because it meant that I didn't have to stick to anyone else's ideas and I could just run free with it all, as long as I was sticking to the certain bits of stage directions of what they do, which was quite easy because it just seemed logical anyway. But it also didn't help in a way because it meant I had so much to think about. It was a bit harder trying to direct the actors for how they feel, as they had nothing to kind of run it against other than like the subtext going on underneath, which, because they were so young, they didn't necessarily understand. So having to teach them all that and figure out for myself, it all just became quite a lot of work, which I think I did fairly well. While there were a few instances with my actor playing Judy, it was quite hard there, just because Judy is quite a hard character, especially the version I have her as. Just being like caring for Christopher, but also being quite rebellious in a way, and still being a mum and loving him in that kind of unconditional way that mothers tend to do. Because she is so young, she doesn't necessarily understand everything about that kind of side of things. So trying to get her to channel any sort of emotions or even create new ones was quite hard. I did try to work one-to-one with her a few times, but it didn't necessarily work as such, just because we weren't in a sort of complete environment where she necessarily felt safe to just express emotions in the way that she possibly could have. But overall, I think with what the script gave me, I think I achieved it fairly well. The section of script I got wasn't too long, and it was the one that I preferred to do, just because it was the end and it was kind of this big dramatic climax with Christopher's dad, Ed, especially with the dog coming out, and the whole appendix as well, which was partially the main reason that I wanted to do this section. But I think as a script, it's quite nice to read, especially like if you're reading it more as a book, not a script, because it is based so much on the book. It's it doesn't feel like a script as such. Um, while there aren't any descriptions or there aren't any kind of explanations of anything, because a lot of the speech is the way Christopher perceives it, which is very straight on and very like it's telling it how it is sort of thing. It's quite easy to read into it and to understand what's really going on. So I definitely think that that is how it was written. It's less about what's in reality and more about Christopher's view of it all, because the book and the play was all about delving into Christopher's mind and really how he thinks about the world and what's going on around him, which I never think is fully put across, that none of this is really how it actually happened. It's all how it's done in Christopher's head. I don't think I put that across especially well, just because I was doing it in a more realistic way rather than a frantic way. But even then, with other people that were doing it in a frantic way, it didn't necessarily get put across very well. So I feel like I could have done that a bit more. But overall, I feel like I did fairly well with the script and figuring out what I wanted with it all, and going through it and kind of understanding what's going on and how I wanted the actors and the characters to be like.